Hello, and welcome to an intro to Anthro with two humans. I'm human number one, John McCray.
And I'm human number two, John Lehr.
And this is the podcast where we reassess what it means to be human. And the title of this episode is Encyclopedic Time Traveler, 1933. so John, we're going to go back in time today.
When you use the colons in the subtitle, it makes it harder on my end.
Oh, well.
Because we've got a colon after the number. I never know what to do. I'm going to use a dash, but I'm going to keep the colon in the for the subtitle, but I'm going to use a dash for episode 50, whatever this is. 59.
Oh, okay. I think Mary is trying to proofread everything and go back in and make it all consistent. So,
oh God. God, there's somebody.
So whatever you do, eventually it will get corrected, I think. Right?
Thank God.
She's got a master's in poetry and English.
I know. So she's amazing.
Yeah.
And speaking of, we're going to have some merchandise coming out soon. We're working on it, peeps. We're working on it.
I'm working on it. Yeah, we got
it. Slow, but we're steady.
Yeah. It's coming. It's coming. We were almost ready, and then we decided we didn't like what the merchandise was, so we had to switch it.
So close after so many false starts.
Yeah. It's on its way, but we'll let you know. Yeah. But John, first of all, we're going back in time, but we need to catch up on the present.
Yes, we do.
Because this episode is a week late.
Yes.
We're running behind.
It's all my fault. I want to apologize. This week, I launched my daughter into the machine. We dropped her off at college so she can be ground up like the rest of us. And
oh my gosh!
Yeah.
But you had to drive your car.
Yes. I have a 2008 Prius, which I paid for in cash back in the day. Brand new car. Wrote a check.
Salad days.
One of my proudest moments. And we've kept the car around because they're so amazing. They don't die. Yeah. Those cars are they're incredible. Right. And it has 199,000 miles on it. And the kids have just used it,
Yeah.
And it's like the extra car, and because Jules now has a car. I bought her a 92 Volvo.
Ooh, nice.
Because how many deaths in a 92 Volvo? Driver deaths?
How many?
0.
Really?
0. Nobody has died driving a Volvo, a 92 Volvo. No one. So I bought that car for her.
Yeah.
And now, but it's, it's a great car, but you're not going to get that across the country. So I gave her the Prius, and I got it all tuned up and everything, and asked the mechanic, is it going to make it? And he goes, oh yeah, absolutely. People get like 600,000 miles on these things. And he said, the only problem is if the big battery, the hybrid battery might go out, and there's no way of telling. It'll just go out.
Wow.
So everything else was up to date and fixed and everything.
Yeah.
And so my daughter and my wife took a flight to New York.
Yeah.
And my son and I drove it across the country, and our first stop was in LA to Albuquerque,
right?
Where we met human number one, and you had some steak and
bolito beans. Bolito beans.
So good, so mwah, ready for us. And I hadn't seen you in the flesh in quite a while, so that was great.
Yeah, it's been about 4 years, I think.
And you were a big hit. When my son, who didn't, he knows you, because I talk about you. They know you, but he hadn't seen you in, I don't know how
Very nice guy, very charming guy. Really grown up since I saw him last.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's like a man now. It's crazy.
A lot of his interests are very like parkour and drumming, very interesting. I loved hearing about it. So
yeah, he's a hardcore drummer. I mean, hardcore, like punk.
Yeah.
In fact, he played last night, and I jumped off the stage. I did a stage dive.
I may have to try to post that. You said that to me. I'll
try
to
post it. I'm very proud of it. It was 1,500 kids. It was a big venue.
Yeah.
And I just, to freak Hudson out, I just jumped up on stage and
You
crashed the
did it.
stage and
You did
dove
it
off.
twice, right? You did it twice.
Well, the first attempt was didn't go so well. I didn't get off.
Right.
I didn't clear the front row. I didn't get airborne quite enough, so they pushed me back onto the damn kids. And then I did it again, and I was successful. So yes,
You had such a look of the smile on your face as you're doing it was just complete
oh,
joy.
oh
Complete joy.
God, there's nothing quite like that. Nothing quite like jumping into the mosh pit. Yeah. So anyway, back to the trip. Everything went well after we
Right.
left you. We drove up. We went. Our next stop was Kansas City, where we
Right.
stopped with my cousin Gar and his
Okay.
family, who, by the way, listened to the podcast.
Thank you
So
very much, Gar.
they're
I'm a big fan.
huge. Thank you,
Yeah.
Riley. His daughter is one of our earliest listeners,
Nice.
and
Old school. Old
she
school.
wasn't there. She wasn't there. She was in Baltimore, but the
Okay.
rest of the fam let us stay the night. Had barbecue waiting.
Ooh.
Some KC barbecue
Always
from
good.
one I hadn't heard of. I forgot what it was called. Something box. Anyway, fantastic. The burnt ends were just delectable.
Yeah.
And so Hudson liked his cousins. So
Nice. That's always good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the next morning, on our way out of Kansas City, I stopped at the old school Bryant's Barbecue, the original KC barbecue, which is
Right. That's the holy of holies.
the
That's
holy of holies. Exactly. Exactly. You have to be a Kohim to get in. So we had another barbecue sandwich at 10
Nice.
a.m.
Perfect.
Brisket. Oh, and Hudson liked it because Bryant's is
not
not
for
for
everybody.
everybody.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. And but Hudson was like, "This is amazing." I almost broke out in tears.
You Lears. It's
Yeah.
something about the Lear taste buds. Just
Yeah,
love
'cause my dad used to bring me there, And so anyway, that was a touching moment. And then we made our way up to Chicago, which
okay.
was fantastic. And my friend Susan Messing was able to get him some rehearsal space for the drums, which was fantastic.
Awesome.
He enjoyed that because it was his birthday.
Very happy birthday, Hudson.
Yep. And I took him, to some old haunts. I took him to Wiener Circle, which is a famous place in Chicago where, if you don't know this, it pisses people off. But if you're in the back of the line and you yell your order and they hear it, they will make it.
Right.
So you can cut in front of the line by just yelling. And then
I'm glad to hear the Wiener Circle has made it. It's like it's still there.
It's still there. And delicious. And they berate you too. They tell you to F off. And this is fantastic. Highly recommend the Wiener Circle on the Clark. And a couple of other places, Ann Sather's for brunch.
Oh, okay.
Found a skate park that he enjoyed, and then we were off and running, and this is when the trouble
you hit the horse latitudes. The horse latitudes.
We crossed the Indiana border into Ohio, and the car just stopped running and coasted right into the toll booth. The toll booth, paid the toll, but couldn't move from there.
You had to pay the toll though. They were like, "You're this far. You can't push it out. You got to push it forward."
And then Hudson had to get out and push me while I'm driving it off to the shoulder, and we were stuck there and had to spend the night in a little tiny town called Eden, Indiana. That was in Indiana, I think, or maybe it was Ohio. Anyway. Stayed the night there we had to get the car towed to the Flying J truck stop.
Yeah.
And then the mechanic was off duty, and he said he didn't know anything about hybrids. We were two libs in a hybrid car with California plates,
Yeah.
deep into the red there. And they could not have been nicer.
Yeah. That's so sweet.
I want to thank D at the Flying J. I want to thank CJ, the mechanic at the Flying J, gave us a ride, wanted to buy us dinner. I had to literally push him away so I could buy him dinner
Yeah.
giving us the ride.
Yeah.
Just everybody we met was just the kindest,
So
most
sweet.
helpful.
So
Yeah,
sweet. Yeah.
yeah. And then it turned out it was just a gas gauge. We found out we were out of gas, but didn't know
In
it.
your hybrid. In your hybrid.
In the
That's the one
hybrid.
drawback of the
Yep.
hybrid is
Well, the gas gauge said we had half a tank, but we had zero.
yeah.
So
Oh, I had remember in my my truck out in LA, I had that GMC Sonoma truck, and it was the same thing. When you get that gas gauge, will stop about 3/8 of a tank, and you try to write it down like what the mileage is, but there's always that chance that you forget one time, and that's the time. Many times I would like run out of gas in that truck where I think I still had 3/8 of a tank, and it
you
was
were
like,
pushing it. You were
yeah.
pushing it. Yeah.
So what
Okay,
did they do? They
made our way, went into Manhattan, and success. Success.
and you finally made it to your daughter Jules.
Yep.
Congratulations. She's going to Bard,
Bard,
right?
yes. And I talked to her today. She's, those first few weeks at college are
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah.
I don't know how it was for you, but I was, I didn't know anybody. And I went to Northwestern. There were a lot of wealthy kids. I'd never been around that.
Right. That's probably the same at Bard, I would think, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there is. I mean, I think they're more, they have more diversity than
Right.
Northwestern did back then.
Right.
Northwestern probably does now, but
And where it's in Annandale,
yes,
right?
Annandale on the Hudson.
That's
Gorgeous. It's
is
like
that the
what a movie of a college should be set on. It's like, why wouldn't you want to go there?
and isn't that where the Steely Dan song, right?
Yes.
Does Annandale like the train to Annandale or something,
Yeah,
right?
and they hated it. They hated it.
Yeah.
Steely Dan hated Bard, which is ridiculous. I now hate Steely Dan
Oh, no.
retroactively.
Well,
Bodhisattva, let me take you. But you know what?
yeah.
Don't be singing Bodhisattva to me.
What's their mascot? Do they have a mascot? Do they?
That's a very good question. I don't know.
Mary has a T-shirt from Sarah Lawrence that says Sarah Lawrence. Of course, they don't have a football team, but it says Sarah Lawrence football still undefeated. So, but anyway, I always how was it? I always get excited when around college when it comes back around when people are going back to school. It's always so exciting to be around a college, and even when I went back to school in my 40s, it was still exciting to go back every year when classes were starting again.
Yeah,
So.
it really is. It's such a. I was walking in with a box of her stuff into her dorm, and I just broke down. That's where that just. I was. I don't know what it was, but by the way, Bard are the Raptors.
The Raptors.
The Raptors.
Holy smokes!
Yeah. So there you have it.
Wow, you have to get some of that swag.
Yeah,
Start wearing that.
I want it all. I'm a Bard dad. I want everything. Just gear me up.
You don't have a car to put that on anymore. How was it seeing your daughter go in though? Emotional? Was it emotional?
So emotional, draining, and just yeah. Like I said, I was carrying some of her stuff in, and I just was like, just broke down.
Probably parents all over the place, all over campus, breaking down.
Oh God, we were all just staring at each other like The Walking Dead. We didn't know what to make of ourselves.
Any other takeaways from your trip? Any lessons learned from your travels?
There's a lot of lovely people out there. A lot of lovely people, and I feel like we talk about all of this. That how we're just there's this war going on between Americans who disagree. But you know what? Once you're out in there, that's the
same way I feel. That's the same way I feel.
You people on social media spoil it for all of us.
I know, or even the people I always saw, because I've testified before Congress.
Yes, you
and
have.
I always saw when you're in there, it's like a game to the people in DC.
Yeah.
And they're just manipulating the people outside. Everybody, both parties, all parties.
Yeah.
And we're out here like fighting each other, but to them it's just a game. So just keep that in mind. Let's get back to who.
That's been my experience as well. And like this guy CJ, who picked at the Flying J, the mechanic, who said, "I don't know how to work on Priuses, but I'll give you guys a ride into town to get a."
Yeah.
He was like gigantic neck tattoos, white dude, everything, and two, libs with California plates. Could not have been the sweetest guy in the world. He's like, "Yeah, my wife, she works at this livestock place. They give her livestock when they can't sell it. They gave her this turkey, and we were going to cook it for Thanksgiving, but I fell in love with it. I can't kill it. My pet." He's like, "I was working I was under the car working. That turkey crawled under the car and cuddled right up to me."
That's fantastic.
This like 6'5",
That's fantastic. So anyway, CJ, thanks for helping get human number 2 where he needed to go.
Everybody, the Flying J and Eden, thank you so much.
We were all worried about you. We were worried about you. I was posting, letting people know what the
what was happening.
So.
And D, who helped out she works at the Flying J. She really helped us. Really, really, really.
D, thank you very much.
D.
We owe you one. We owe you one. But the reason I'm asking, John, is I wanted to talk about your trip is that, we're never the same after we come off a long journey or a trip. You start out one way and something happens.
Absolutely.
Something happens, dude.
Absolutely. It's so meditative, the road in front of you is the future. Inside the car is the present. The rear view mirror is the past.
And when you're sitting there at the toll plaza, just waiting for the truck to come.
Oh, God.
But I think that's the point of all road movies, whether it be Homer's Odyssey or National Lampoon's Vacation, is that you're transformed by the journey itself. And you may not know it until you get back and you take stock of who you are now and what happened over that trip.
Could not agree more. There's something that goes on. If you've never driven coast to coast, do it. Put it in the bucket list.
And let me know if you come through Albuquerque. You'll have
steak and beans in Albuquerque.
Bolito beans. I also gave you guys bizcochitos, which is the state cookie of New Mexico.
The state cookie and Hudson, that was a big hit with both of us, but Hudson devoured an entire box.
I know. They're very good. I'm not sure if all states have state cookies, but New Mexico has a state cookie.
State cookie. I'm going to look up the California state cookie.
Just continue. I feel like we as a species have been on a 7.5 million year road trip, a journey, trying to figure out that it has led us to where we're at right now.
Yes.
And so today, John, we are going to travel back in time 91 years to the year 1933. Okay.
Rough time.
And just so I have a question for you. When you were a kid, did you ever watch Mr. Peabody and Sherman?
Of course. Of course. And the Wayback Machine?
The Wayback Machine.
Yes.
Yeah.
God, I love that dog, Sherman.
The kid was Sherman. Mr. Peabody was the dog.
Peabody, he was fantastic.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, and apparently they did the show again in 2014. I think they did a movie of it. And then they had a series of it in 2015 through 17. But we're talking about the original one back in the late 1950s, early 1960s.
Yeah.
They were part of the Rocky and Bullwinkle universe.
Such a great show. That thing was nutball. That was subversive.
Yeah, it really was. It was produced by Jay Ward. And in the book, The Mouse That Roared, the story of Jay Ward, Bill Scott, a flying squirrel, and a talking moose, author Keith Scott says that the idea for Mr. Peabody and Sherman originally came from the cartoonist Ted Key. And were you a Rocky and Bullwinkle guy?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
back then you had to be. You only had 3 channels.
I know. They'd always stick them on there. I wouldn't, I would say I was more of deep down, I was more of an Underdog, Speed Racer, and Scooby-Doo kind of guy.
Yeah, but if Bullwinkle was the only thing on, you watched it.
Oh, yeah, I know all the Natasha, Boris and
Gosh,
Natasha.
she was smoking hot.
Just the way it was drawn. Remember, it was like blue. I always remember it like blues, whites, and blacks. Like
Yes.
that was like the drawings with them.
This was back when like children's television was like the Wild West. Nobody was really monitoring it. These crazy nut jobs who were making children's television, they were rewiring all these kids.
Yeah.
I'm definitely who I am because of shows like that and Electric Company and Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street. I mean, those were Zoom. Remember that?
Yeah.
Or what about the Huff and Puff?
H.R. Huff and Puff. Yeah.
Oh my God, that was a nutball. That was an acid trip. No wonder I became a drug addict. It's their
That's the way I feel. I feel like, as I mentioned, like Underdog, Speed Racer, and Scooby-Doo, those are like elements of my personality. Like I've always considered myself to be an underdog. I'm into the paranormal. And somewhere there's like me and Chim Chim are like doing donuts in the Mach 5. You know what I mean?
You're always hiding in the back of the Mach 5 in the trunk.
Yeah. And apparently, I guess Underdog and Tennessee Tuxedo were part of they were done by a company called Total Television Productions, which was
right.
So
totally stoned.
Yeah. But I think and you brought it up already. If you ask people what kid shows they watched when they were growing up, you get an insight into who they were or who they are now. I think. Were you a Mr. Rogers or a Captain Kangaroo guy?
Both, but Mr. Rogers, I mean, I don't know, man. He really touched my brother and I. He just calmed us and made us feel all right during some turbulent times.
Yeah.
My parents were gone. We were just stuck in front of the TV, and Mr. Rogers like, it's going to be all right.
I never, I really was. He'd come on. If I had to, I'd be there and watch it. But I was more of a Captain Kangaroo guy.
Mr. Green Jeans. Oh my God.
Yeah.
God, what was going on with him?
Oh, Captain, my Captain. It's like Bunny Rabbit, Mr. Moose, Dancing Bear, Mr. Green Jeans.
Oh yeah, Dancing Bear. I forgot that. Yeah.
Heady times. Heady times. But Mr. Peabody and Sherman was a cartoon about a very smart dog, Mr. Peabody,
Genius.
and his adopted human son, Sherman. And so on the Wikipedia page for Mr. Peabody, it says, quote, the cartoons are about Peabody, who is the smartest being in existence, having graduated from Harvard when he was 3 years old. Magna cum laude.
But that's like 21 for human.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah, he's not that great.
Yeah.
Not that great. It's just average.
Yeah.
But Peabody has accomplished many things, this is again Wikipedia, in his life as a business magnate, inventor, scientist, Nobel laureate, gourmand, and two-time Olympic medalist. And they say in the first episode, which I don't remember the first episode, but they say in the first episode, quote, Peabody meets an orphan named Sherman, who he saves from bullies. He adopts Sherman after a court appearance that also involved him having to get the president and the government to help him out. So I think it's in the book, the Moose That Roared. I think Key says that it was the idea. The original joke was that it was a dog that adopted an orphan human. You know what I mean? Like
Humans, he had just the pet, the dog's the owner,
right? But I'm thinking that this idea that they had to write about. I'm just imagining like some studio executive somewhere, like hearing the pitch and being like, "Wait a second, how does he adopt?"
Yeah.
legally, how does this happen?
Yeah, the logic police that always jump in. When you're a comedy writer, you're always dealing with the logic police
Yeah.
because they have no sense of humor. It's so weird the people who get attracted to comedy being
Yeah.
executives because they 99% don't have they don't have senses of humor.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I really don't understand
I
it.
know, I know. Maybe they're thinking, "I will find my sense of humor." I don't, or
I
maybe
don't I don't know how many times I've had to argue with an executive who says it, but I don't it doesn't make sense. And I go, it's funny.
yeah.
That's the priority. Then we'll worry about making sense.
Right.
You don't cut. And whenever you're cutting a show to time, what's the first thing they cut? The jokes. They're
Yeah.
like, well, you don't need that. I'm like, listen, the whole point of this is for that.
Yeah, cut the plot. Cut the plot out.
We'll figure the plot out. My God.
But as I read it, I thought it was so funny that like they had to go in and say that the president had to get involved just to take care of the legality. Like, oh no, there's no way a dog is
Yeah,
going to
nobody's going
adopt
to
a
buy
human.
that. Well, they're teaching 5-year-olds. I don't care. Their
Yeah,
parents are watching.
it's a talking dog. It's a
Because the
talking.
pilot's always the hardest one because you got all the executives are all
Oh
over.
yeah,
And then after you
yeah,
get past the pilot in the first season, the reason the second season of all TV shows suck, rarely do you have
yeah.
a second season that's better than the first, is because the whole crew is so exhausted from being goaded to death by all these executives.
Yeah,
Everybody's just like, Jesus Christ, I hate this show now.
yeah. uh, but once Mr. Peabody, once we settled the whole thing about the legality of a dog being able to legally have custody of a human, Mr. Peabody, to keep Sherman occupied and to keep Sherman from getting bored, he creates the Wayback Machine, which
Nah,
is a time machine. Okay.
so great.
And again in the book, The Mouse That Roared, Keith Scott says, quote, Mr. Peabody, the genius dog who lives in a penthouse apartment, and Sherman, the young boy he adopts, travel through time in the Wayback Machine, which was the canine's own invention. So Mr.
That's
Peabody,
where the show started. Then they
right,
had to justify the backstory of, well, how did they invent it? Well, he's super smart. Yes, but what he majored in what? You're just like, Jesus Christ. It's a dog and a kid. They get in a Wayback
I
Machine.
know.
Did we get to that part? Wow.
Yeah.
Everything's
Well, what did he study in school? What was his?
nobody's gonna care. It's always like whenever I'm, dealing with a sitcom and they want to know
Yeah,
where it's set, what town,
it doesn't matter.
and you're like, listen, nobody's going to refer to what town we're in.
Yeah,
Any
yeah,
show refer to what town we're WKRP in Cincinnati
yeah.
and Friends because it was in New York, but it wasn't. There nobody in New York lived in
I
that.
know. I know. Yeah, it's the same with the title. People will be like, "Well, what's it?" It's like the title is going to change by the time it squirts out at
Oh,
the other end. So why are
where?
you even asking me what the title
Gilligan's
is?
Island. Now, where would this island be? Well, it's in who knows because no, but we should. So they're in where? It's in the Caribbean. You know they went down that road.
I know. I know. Uh, but Scott says, "quote." The cartoon segment was a sort of updated version of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine.
For sure.
But while Wells' characters merely observed the passage of history, Peabody participated.
Yeah. They engaged.
Right. And was, in fact, the direct cause of each event ending up safely in the history books.
Yeah, that's right. They went back and made sure it went right. Thank
Right.
God for Mr.
And,
P.
and in the book, Scott quotes Jay Ward, who said, quote, the comedy comes from the fact that all these famous historical figures were complete boobs.
Yep. Yep. But it really seared a lesson in my mind that things aren't you can't believe everything you hear.
Right.
Well,
Right.
all these heroes, Abraham Lincoln, all these people are all these, we set them up as such heroes, but they're just people like us trying to do the best
Right.
they can. I
Right.
just love that.
And they did apparently 91 episodes with different historical figures in them, but it was always like Pike's Peak. The Pike was afraid of heights. Or Leonardo da Vinci, he couldn't do Mona Lisa's smile because she had a toothache or so. So it was always things that like Mr. Peabody would have to jump in there and
I
help
didn't know
out.
we did 90 plus episodes. That's legit.
I
Yeah,
know. I know.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
it really is.
brother.
Uh, and they said that Scott says Mr. Peabody possessed supreme self confidence and had no qualms about reminding us of that fact.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to his superior intellect and perception, the final historical outcome was his. And why shouldn't he brag? Don't forget, it's Mr. Peabody who draws up the blueprints for the Great Pyramids.
Yeah, Peabody was unflappable. He always
I
had it
know.
covered.
And remember, at the end of every episode, he would do some bad pun about like whatever it
Yeah.
was.
Yep. And then they hit the music sting, and we're out.
Yeah.
That's the commercial. Fantastic.
And so anyway, John, I'm not saying I have the intellect of Mr. Peabody, but
Mhm.
today I'm going to be your Mr. Peabody,
Oh, Jesus. All right.
and you are going to be my Sherman.
Oh, thank God. So I'm adopted. So you pay for everything, right? You take
Right,
care of me.
right.
Oh, what a
In my
relief.
penthouse.
Oh, thank God.
Golly gee, Mr. Peabody.
Yeah.
Remember he used to
Yeah.
he always
I
did.
don't know, Mr. Peabody.
They always had Rocky and Bullwinkle always had nothing up my sleeve. He always had that whole thing like that. That whole thing. Their voices, everything was just crazy, just
Yeah, it
oddball.
really was.
So anyway, we're going to climb into our own Wayback Machine
Okay.
and travel back in time to the year 1933. And
Jesus. Tough time. Why are we going there? Rough time.
well, I'll tell you that story why we're going there. Our time machine is going to be a set of encyclopedias. Okay.
I see what's happening.
Did you have a set of encyclopedias? Your house always seemed like there would be a set of encyclopedias somewhere in your house.
Absolutely. We had the World Book, Encyclopedia, and then we had another set of encyclopedia. We had two
Really?
sets.
Britannica? Who was it?
Britannica, yeah, might have been.
Yeah.
And I
Britannica
used
was
those.
English. It was England, from England, I think. Britannica was from
Oh,
England.
was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they were thicker.
Yeah.
Anyway, I used those for reports and all kinds of stuff. They were handy. That was Google before Google.
I know.
Wikipedia.
I know. I always I seem to remember, did you guys have a piano too?
Yes, we did. Upright. Nobody
Yeah.
played it, but we had it. Steve and I both took lessons and sucked. And I think my mom could play a little bit. I don't know.
In my mind, like as I was putting this together, I remember like in your house, I had a feeling there was a piano and there was also a set of encyclopedias in the living room.
You are absolutely right. Yep.
And I always, your mother, I mean, because encyclopedias were very expensive back then. The set of encyclopedias.
Yeah.
And it always seemed to me that your mother would be the type of person, she would go without lunch or dinner for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She worked two jobs. She
Yeah.
was typing at night. To this day, when I hear typewriting, I fall right asleep. It's so soothing.
She was like one of the most selfless people I've ever known in my life. Just kind person. But it seemed like she would make certain that you guys had a set of encyclopedias in your house.
Fortunately, later in life, she fell in love with my my stepfather, Lynn. This was after I was already an adult, and they had peace and calm, and she finally had a good life. And then he, got
oh my God.
My poor mom. She
couldn't get a break. Couldn't get a break. I know I always, as a kid, always wanted a set of encyclopedias. And
you should have told me. I'd let you have one of ours.
I could check them out over
here. You could have loaded that right into your Falcon and you could have driven it home.
It's like it would have been, as a little kid, it was like my dream of like, you just go grab that and look at random information. You know what I mean?
You should have told me.
Well, my mom was always like, no, you got to go to the library. If you want to go use theirs, it's too expensive.
I'm working my ass off.
Right. And it was kind of like to get a set of encyclopedias. There were horror stories about people who would sign a contract. It was almost like getting a timeshare. You know,
Yes. Yeah, you buy them one at a time, and
if,
and then you couldn't get out of it. Yeah, it was like a pyramid scheme.
yeah, years later, your parents would still be paying on those
Yeah,
encyclopedias. You know.
this month you're getting STU. However,
Yeah.
you check the box that. Yeah,
Right. You're getting the index first. You know,
yeah.
they send out the index,
Oh, yeah. That's so
the
funny.
study guide. You get the study guide first. Uh, but anyway, growing up, my dream was always to own a set of encyclopedias of my
Mm,
own.
yeah.
And in 1990, when I was 24 years old, I was finally able to buy my own set of World Book encyclopedias. Unfortunately, the set was from 1933. It was 57 years old at the time.
Oh,
So,
boy.
yeah.
Oh,
So the information was 6 decades old by the time, completely out of date at that time.
yes. Yeah.
And I had found it at the Maxwell Street Market in Chicago.
Fantastic place.
Yeah.
Yes, it's gone, right? It's gone now?
I was reading where they're bringing it back. They're
Oh,
bringing it back
really?
to the original location, but the Maxwell Street Market was a huge historic flea market
Yeah.
just southwest of downtown Chicago. And it had been there from like I think the 1800s all the way up to the early 1990s.
Was that where the anarchists tried to blow a bomb up? Or is
That
that
was Haymarket.
Oh,
Haymarket.
Haymarket. Right, right.
Yeah, which both of them, and then it used to be, I think it was Halstead and Maxwell Street in Chicago, but it went on for blocks. It was just a huge, huge flea market every
Amazing.
weekend.
Amazing.
And I think if in early, I think like 1994, they finally moved it because University of Chicago was expanding. But
Oh,
and
boy.
then now they're trying to bring it back there. But if you've seen the Blues Brothers, and there's that scene where John Lee Hooker is singing Boom Boom
Yep.
outside on the street,
Yeah.
that is at Maxwell Street Market.
Yes, it
And
is.
there's some other famous blues musicians that are in that scene as well. But that's where that gives you an idea of what Maxwell Street Market was like. And I was down at Maxwell Street Market one weekend and I found this complete set of World Book encyclopedias
In
from
pristine
1933.
condition. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That this guy was selling. And he was selling it for $10. $10
Yeah.
bucks.
Like, I got somebody to haul those away and they paid me $10.
I know.
That's what he's
I
thinking.
didn't even haggle. He was a little shocked. I didn't even want to haggle. You know, it's like $10. Yeah, here's my $10. And he was a little surprised about that. But then my girlfriend at the time, who was with me, was a little upset because she had to help me haul all those encyclopedias back to the car and then haul them up 2.5 flights to our apartment at the
Oh,
time.
Jesus. Oh,
Uh, and for the past 34 years, I've been hauling that complete set of 1933 World Book encyclopedias around everywhere I've moved.
oh
I
God.
have, yeah, from
I'm trying
like,
to think. I must have hauled them because I moved you out of that place on Quarrie.
yeah, I'm sure you
I'm
hauled them
sure
up.
your brother David and I moved you out of there once.
I
Or did we
know
move you in? I can't remember.
you moved us out of that place and into the other place, and that was even we had to carry those things up like three and a half
Oh,
flights of
yeah,
three
but
and a
your
half flights.
brother got that piece of rope and hauled everything up.
I know.
That was incredible.
He was a construction worker, and he would just like tie everything down at the bottom, and then John and I would haul it
Haul
up
it up.
with a rope.
That was
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
Like hanging clothes. He like fashioned a rod and tied it, hung all the clothes on, and we pulled up your entire closet.
I know. It just right up. Everything's still on the hooks and hangers. Go right into it. Put them in the
It was
closet. The new
incredible.
ones. Yeah, he was amazing. But to give you a little background about the World Book Encyclopedia, okay,
Okay.
uh, it's and it's interesting. I had to go to the Encyclopedia Britannica and Encyclopedia.com to get information on the World Book Encyclopedia history. But Encyclopedia Britannica says the World Book was first published in 1917
Ooh.
and revised annually from 1925. Its title was later shortened to World Book, and filling 22 volumes, this specific entry print reference work emphasizes geography and biography and gives broad treatment to such subject areas as business, psychology, government, energy, ecology, and criminology.
A college degree on a shelf.
Right. So, and Encyclopedia Britannica also says World Book Encyclopedia is produced by World Book Inc. It's still being produced now in print, even.
Wow.
Yeah, they do an electronic version, but still in print, which is headquartered in Chicago. So I got that. That may have been like a first edition or something. I don't know.
And probably it's probably only moved like a block from where it was printed.
Yeah,
until you came into the picture, and now they're all in Albuquerque.
I know. They were down in the Loop when it didn't go that far from the Loop over to Maxwell Street Market. So they. And sure enough, when you look at the title and copyright pages, which I'm holding this up now, if you're watching online, to John.
No.
You can see it says the World Book Encyclopedia, modern, pictorial, comprehensive, in 18 volumes. Okay, so
yeah, they combined some letters.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking that in 1933, now we have 22 volumes. In 1930, there was knowledge you could get all the knowledge in the world into 18 volumes.
It's like, come on, we got to get it up to 20. There's nothing else to put in. We put all of humanity in 18 volumes.
Did you double space it? Yes, we double spaced it.
Well, let's increase the font. It's already at full. I'm telling you.
Yeah. For people who feel like the world's become more complex over the last 100 years, it had. It's become 4 volumes more complex.
4 more volumes.
Yeah. But the title and copyright page says it was published by W.F. Quarrie and Company in Chicago.
Wow.
And it says it was first published as the World Book in 1917. So this was only 16 years after it was first published.
Yeah. They were still hot. They were still full of vinegar and vigor.
still figuring it out.
Come on, you guys. It wasn't until like 39 they all started to burn out. They're like, no.
Who cares? Is anybody even reading this up?
Nobody. It's just like we're locked in.
But they changed their name in 1930 to the World Book Encyclopedia. So it went from the World Book to the World Book Encyclopedia.
Wow, that must have been a big move.
Yeah, the price really shot up there.
It's a bunch of books, but we have a singular book. It's confusing. That was probably sales coming in, going, listen.
Yeah.
They're like, if it's called World Book, why is it 18 volumes? Each book is a book. The whole thing is one book. We just divide it out. It's too much. It's like the Talmud.
People are just confused. They don't know what they're buying, what we're selling, what we're running.
No, is it a book or what is it?
According to Encyclopedia.com, they say the World Book, quote, the World Book Inc. is the progeny of entrepreneurs J.H. Hansen and John Bellows. And in the early 1900s, through their publishing house, Hansen Bellows Company, the two Chicago businessmen published the New Practical Reference Set, a general purpose reference tool.
Oh.
Okay, so that's where it started.
One was like about the info, and the other one was about sales.
I know. They sold out, man. They sold out. You should see them people.
Listen, here it's just not. We need to forget all this stupid stuff. You got focus on biographies.
More pictures. And that's what Encyclopedia.com says. They say that Hansen and Bellows found out that, and this is a quote, that their set of encyclopedias, like many other works at the time, were ill-suited to the needs of children.
Mm-hmm.
And the content of formatted encyclopedias was too rigid and technical for kids. But Hansen and Bellows believed that a market existed for reference materials geared specifically towards young people. So you see how that's where they were like, wait a second.
They found a new demo.
Right. And so in 1915, Hansen and Bellows got the help of Michael Vincent O'Shea.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. And O'Shea,
there.
according to the Wisconsin Historical Society, Michael Vincent O'Shea lived from 1866 to 1932, and he was a well-known educator. And he would visit. He was a visiting lecturer at many colleges and would talk about teaching. And in 1905, he was the chairman of the International Congress of Educators in Belgium.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this is back when teaching was a thing, you had Dewey and the Dewey schools and all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, this was like when we believed in education,
right?
Public education,
right? Exactly. And then in 1911, he was the president of the Society of College Teachers of Education.
Well, so who wasn't? I'm
yeah.
That's not a big deal. That's like getting your own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. You just need some money and know the right people.
He also wrote a bunch of books, Education as Adjustment in 1903, Dynamic Factors in Education 1906, and Consolidation of Schools in Wisconsin in 1930. So he was like one of the leading, if not the leading, expert on education in the early 1900s. And that's who Hansen and Bellows got to come in and take a look at their encyclopedias and try to come up with a new type of encyclopedia for young people.
Wow.
And according to Encyclopedia.com, O'Shea was full of ideas about how the new practical reference set could be adapted for a younger audience. And he thought that the text, while still accurate and informative, should be more engaging and easier to read.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Way to go, O'Shea.
Yeah. And according to Encyclopedia.com, he also believed that illustrations could be used with the entries to capture the reader's attention and to provide important visual information.
Way to go. Thank God for O'Shea. He came in there and blew the dust off. He's like, we're going to make some changes.
Yeah.
I remember was this in the World Book where there was like the human body?
Yeah, I was just thinking of that.
It was the craziest thing. And they were like transparent plastic pages, and you could see the cardiovascular system. You could see oh God. And the guy had a penis, and my brother and I, God,
yeah,
we love that.
But remember, you had to be really careful because the static, those sheets would stick together, and you'd have to be really careful.
I bet he plugged those in. He's like, listen. And Hanson's like, wait, what? Plastic pages? It's going to cost a fortune. Let me tell you, kids will masturbate to that. That's going to be your go-to pages. They're going to go to that more than they go to the Sears underwear catalog.
There was a crossover market. For that. That's why all the kids were pleading with their parents to get the... So Encyclopedia.com says in 1917, Hansen and Bellows published the results of Shea's work, a set of encyclopedias entitled World Book. And the first series that came out in 1970 was 8 volumes with 6,300 pages. And the text was accompanied by thousands of detailed illustrations and photographs.
Wow, they really just bought in.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty amazing to me that they went for it. Like, hey, there's something we can sell here.
Yeah.
And O'Shea wrote, and again, coming from Encyclopedia.com, O'Shea wrote in the preface to the first edition, quote, as a rule, encyclopedias are apt to be quite formal and technical. And he added that a faithful effort has been made in the World Book to avoid this common defect.
Well, he succeeded.
Michael Vincent O'Shea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Way to go.
And then, so it was it was so well received that in 1919, W.F. Quarrie and Company in Chicago
Uh-oh.
bought it,
Oh,
bought
I
the company,
see. Boy, that's
bought.
like selling to a network, you know? Korean company, what? They made an offer? You
Yeah,
know they were all wasted after that. Oh my god!
yeah, that champagne popping, and
Yeah. Woohoo!
but they kept O'Shea on. They kept O'Shea on, and the first major revision of the text occurred in 1929. And what they did is they hired also like a editorial board of educators to come on and overlook all the information in the World Book.
Wow.
And also what they were trying to do is they were trying to look at school curricula across the country and try to see how they could adapt World Book
Mhm.
Encyclopedia to suit.
Every single social studies essay I had, boom, World Book.
Yeah,
First stop.
yeah. And so there it was a big
Copy it
deal.
word for word.
Yeah, yeah. It's all right. At least then you had to write it out. You were getting something out of it. When I was working as a teaching at college as a TA, and sometimes you'd be grading papers, and you'd see like, like suddenly the font would change, and
Right.
it would be like all of a sudden
Listen,
the
dude,
spacing would change, the font
do a
would change.
select all, would you? At
Yeah,
the end? Trust
yeah.
me on this. Kind of idiot.
And so there are a couple things that Quarrie and Company did with World Book. They tried to improve it. So the first thing they did is they came up in the 1930s. They came up with a unit letter system of arrangement, which
Mm.
is where we have the letters like A, B, C.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I
Yeah,
mean, that seems obvious, but yes, okay.
but that nobody had thought about that. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
just before that. It was just everything just kind of jumbled together.
Well,
So
that's
that was
ridiculous. That's just stupid. That's unhelpful.
and then they came up with the other thing. In addition to trying to sell to schools, they came up with the direct sales,
There
and
we
that was your door
Here
to
we go.
door,
Yes.
encyclopedia salesman that would show up and try to convince parents that, like, look, your kids need this. They're going
Yeah.
to need this.
And it's the two biggest markets are pets and kids. And you play upon people's emotions.
Right.
Do you really love your kid? Well, you should get the World Book. You know, do you
He's going to
really
be
love your
behind. She's
pet?
going to be behind. He's
Yes,
going to
she's
be
going to be
behind.
behind. Do you really love your pet? Well, you got to have gourmet human food. And
Yeah.
here's the answer: no, you don't. No, you don't. You
They
don't.
eat out of the trash.
You
They
don't
eat
leave
out.
anything.
They eat poop. They eat poop.
They eat poop, their own poop, and then they poop that out and eat that poop. I saw my dog Diesel, my 130-pound
Yeah.
Alaskan Malamute. I saw him eat a rock a few times. He just sniffed at a piece of rock and ate it.
Just crunched it to see what it was.
Just swallowed it whole like a pill.
I was thinking, this was during the 30s that they came out with. Can you imagine during the Depression, the Great Depression,
Oh,
traveling, trying to sell
oh,
encyclopedias?
yeah, I can't imagine because I work in television in Hollywood. I can't imagine. I'm basically that. I go in, I get inside, I spill dirt on your carpet. Oops, but wait a minute, the Electrolux. That's exactly what I do.
That's a great metaphor for pitching TV shows. It's like trying to sell encyclopedias during the Great Depression.
Oh, God. It is, especially now when you have to pitch on Zoom. Those sons
Oh,
of bitches. Those
oh,
lazy sons of
yeah.
bitches.
So they can even like put it like stop it, like turn the camera off, take another
Oh, they're
call, get up.
masturbating to porn. And God knows what they're doing. Those twisted fucks.
Uh, Real quick. So in 1945, the Marshall Field Company, bought Quarrie or bought World Book from Quarrie and Company.
Weird. That's a weird
Yeah,
purchase. To people, Marshall Fields was like a Macy, like a
department store. Yeah,
Bloomingdale's. Yeah.
yeah. But they owned every. I mean, they were huge back then. Remember, it was like, what was it? Carson Perry Scott and Marshall Field were the two big Chicago
Yeah.
department stores.
This was like Sears and Montgomery Ward. It was like that kind of time.
Yeah. But like 13 story, like
Yeah.
even when we lived in Chicago, Marshall Field was still like a separate company. I think it's been bought by somebody else now.
It was an
Um,
amazing place. That place
yeah.
was huge.
Remember they did Frango mints. Remember they
Yes,
made
so
mints and you
good.
could go down there right in the store. They were making mints and you could go down there and
I dropped
everything.
acid and spent the whole day in that.
Yeah, yeah, you could. That's how good it was. You could even stay in there forever,
The whole
floor after
day.
floor after floor.
The weather was a little too cold for outdoor tripping, so I went to Marshall Field.
Remember, but it was would it be like uh, floor 17 or floor 14 the menswear?
Yeah,
Like it was that sort of thing.
like Herald
That's
Square for Macy's in New York City. Same
yeah,
thing.
yeah. But anyway, Marshall Field owned a bunch of other stuff. So he bought Quarrie and Company and the World Book,
Smart.
uh, and they owned that up until 1978. So they owned it
Wow.
for decades.
Wow.
And then they were bought then Marshall Field sold that company to that aspect, the educational book company, to Scott Fetzer and Company, who changed the name to World Book Inc. And then in the 1980s, Berkshire Hathaway bought Scott Fetzer
You're kidding.
Company. No, so,
Bunch of real estate dudes.
yeah, so it's still in business. Like you could still buy a set of World Book encyclopedias, print like the actual hard volumes of it if you
Wow.
want. You can also get the electronic copy.
But you can get a set from 1933 for $10
I know. Well, that's what I
if you
still.
promise to haul it away that day.
Yeah, yeah. The guy, he was so happy. He was so happy. And so in 2024, the print version has 22 volumes, and it costs around $1,100.
What?
Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah. And just so you know, it's kind of like buying a used car or buying a car. If you wait until the next year, you can get the 2023 set is only $900.
Yeah, boy. Been there. Unless it's a Prius.
Yeah, they last forever.
600,000 miles on Priuses.
Oh,
Isn't that incredible?
yeah.
The
Yours
guy
looked a
in the
little
dealership-
rough. Yours had been through some wear when you pulled into my driveway.
Well, yeah. Had 200,000 miles on it. Like me. You can't just, expect me to look like I did in the late 80s, early 90s.
I was looking around my neighbors, making certain my neighbors were down when
Yeah.
you came pulling in that thing.
It
Looked a
did.
little rough.
Yeah, it was. It was.
So John, we're going to use this set of encyclopedias now to go back in time, because to me it's almost like it's a time capsule.
Yes, it is. Yes,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that.
And what I'm going to do, remember, this was cutting edge education at the time and knowledge.
Yeah, and it was the only place on the block.
Yeah.
If you didn't use the encyclopedia, then you had to research everything independently.
Right.
So this was the only place that you could it was the first place you went. Let's put it that way. Always.
Yeah. And it was, I'm always shocked just to see what they were writing about and then also what they were saying about it as well. Yeah.
Some of this didn't age well.
Yeah.
Mr. Peabody.
Yeah.
I have a feeling.
That's right, Sherman. That's right, Sherman. Especially things when it comes to like race, ethnicity, gender.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy.
So, some of it, I'm going to read it verbatim. Some of it will be funny, but it's more just to see how far we've come on this journey.
I think that's great, because we all think that we're like, we're so down on ourselves.
Right. Right.
And the conservatives are like, this sucks, we got to go back, and the libs are like, this sucks, we got to make massive changes.
Yeah.
And what? When you look back, we've come a long way, you guys.
Yeah, you don't know, because we've been on the journey. We've been on the trip.
Which is a big part of what anthropology is, I think, is seeing how much has changed.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So I'm going to, and like I say, some of it if you feel awkward, there may be some nervous laughter about some of this stuff.
Not for me. I take it seriously.
uh, but I just want you to know that again, it's good for us if you feel shocked, if you feel uncomfortable about something. It means that we've grown. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
boy.
So.
All right. Sounds good. Bring it.
Okay, so here's what I haven't. I just printed up different parts so people can see. I've kind of put them into technology, health, education, society, and history.
Okay.
And I'm just going to read off a few things, John, and just get your thoughts. I also did people and races at the very end, but I'll just read off a few and just get your thoughts on them. So, 1933, starting out, I was looking at technology, and remember, this was before computers, before the atom bomb. So I was looking to see what was the top technology at the time. And what I found that was interesting was this article here, which is on the vacuum cleaner.
Oh, this is helpful. Mine just broke.
Oh, really?
I have to take it in.
There's a very extensive article on the vacuum cleaner here because this was cutting edge technology. And what I found interesting, it says in the first type that was designed, the air pump was operated by a large gasoline engine, which was driven on a truck from house to house. Connection from the street was made by a long rubber hose, and the dust was drawn through the hose and expelled into a box in the wagon.
Oh my God. It's like when you get your carpets clean today. They pull up in a van.
Right.
Wow. So I bet it worked great though. Gasoline engine, man. I bet the suction they got on that.
I'll have to post a photo of. I had to look it up. I'm like, what gasoline? Just start that up. I was imagining people in your house of like a lawnmower in your house.
Everybody just dies from. Oh man! But the carpet's clean.
Yeah, and then it also says that in France. In France, the vacuum cleaner is helping in the detection of criminals by drawing out dust, dirt, and hair on the clothing of suspected persons.
Oh,
so it really was cutting edge. It was the vacuum cleaner was a
forensic. That's CSI, man.
Yeah,
I'd like to see our current CSI shows. You have like a little dust buster.
Yeah. Here is the other technology, the story of radio. Remember, radio was kind of new.
Marconi.
Right.
But I guess there's a big argument about whether Marconi really did it or.
Yeah, I think it's always that way. But it says radio is one of the most fascinating discoveries of all time. We are too close to its beginnings and development to have lost the feeling of wonder at the daily occurrence of instantaneous communication between far distant points.
Okay. I feel like that first sentence could be cut. I feel like that's just filler. He had to do 3.5 inches, or something.
Right.
Oh, shit. I need 7 more words.
Well, you should hear his it's kind of funny in this because they go back to the classics. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's very poetic at sometimes. So the first one is the story of radio communication, the legendary account of the birth of Minerva, Roman goddess of wisdom, how she sprang full grown from the head of Jupiter, clad in shining armor and singing a song of triumph, reminds one of the advent of radio.
What? Oh, Jesus. That's just gobbledygook. You know what? Cut that sentence out, put it in the Greek section, and get to it. I want to hear about tubes. I want to hear about electrons. What the fuck is this thing? Don't talk
Minerva.
Minerva.
It goes back to Minerva. That's
Minerva. You see, these guys were just in carols writing this stuff.
I know. By the word, probably.
Oh,
wow. A big article, which probably I don't think you'd see that today, on ventriloquism. There's one on ventriloquism.
I love that. That's fantastic.
And it kind of tells you how to do it. They say that sounds are produced in the usual method adopted in talking. The lips are held as nearly motionless as possible. Are you trying it?
That's the key. You gotta keep
The
the lip.
tongue being drawn well back, allowing only the tip to move. Consonants are often changed to avoid lip-moving syllables. For instance, the letter P becomes a K.
Yeah, you don't want to. You got to watch your glottals when you're a ventriloquist. You know.
Did you ever do ventriloquism? Was that something you?
I never did. How about you?
No, but I was fascinated that this was probably like for people who want to go into this line of work. You know, I mean, Charlie McCarthy, this was a way kind of getting you started through it.
Jesus.
I was wondering, I was thinking in silent films, did they have ventriloquism? It'd be a little bit easier, you know what I mean? Just put a card up there. Hi, Mr. McCarthy, you know.
Cut to the card where it says what I'm saying.
There's also what I found interesting was a lot of military stuff. So there was like a whole article about shrapnel and how shrapnel works.
Whoa.
And how I'm showing this online. They have an illustration on how shrapnel is exploded in front of troops, over troops.
I wonder if they repurposed other material, like if you had public access to a bunch of military stuff, and you could kind of rework it, put some designs. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, grab that. We need more room in M or in S. Get me shrapnel. I want an article on it. Use this. Take this.
Yeah. I don't know. It's really detailed. It almost seems like a military manual that they stuck in there. They also had the amazing power of dynamite.
Oh, I feel like I read that. I think I did. Nobel, right? Didn't the Nobel Peace Prize come from dynamite?
Right. It did. But it's talking about it's a giant in a meek disguise. A stick of dynamite is what it's saying.
It is a giant. That's the title of my autobiography.
A giant in a meek disguise. The John Lehr. You could do the book on tape and do a ventriloquist stuff. When I was born,
John Lehr was born in Kansas City in 1965.
Here's the story of moving pictures.
Okay.
Right. And it says, moving pictures, at first thought, moving pictures seem to furnish an exception to the old adage, there's no new thing under the sun.
Yeah. Guess what? There's too many new things under the sun.
Yeah, just try to pitch that. Try to pitch something. You'll figure out what you're going to do. And then it goes in, it says some of the leading players of Hollywood at the time. George Arliss, who was the dean of actors and of stage and screen. It's like, who? George Arliss.
I've seen that name, in New York or some, I don't know. I've seen it.
Richard Barthelmess, popular in a wide variety of character roles.
With a name like Barthelmess?
I know.
Nobody said to change it?
And then they do have Charlie Chaplin, whose costume and whose wistful buffoonery are familiar wherever motion pictures are shown. But then you have Ruth Chatterton, who she interrupted her schooling to join a stock company at the age of 14.
Wow.
So
I wish I'd started this business at 14. I was just dicking around in middle school with you.
I know. We should have gone on the road back then.
We should have immediately gone to Hollywood.
We would have think of how many episodes of this podcast we would have if we started at 14. There's also moving on to health. A lot of the health stuff, it was almost like an almanac. They would give you the history of things, but they would also tell you how to do. It was almost like a manual on how to do certain things in the classroom or how people could live more healthfully. And some of the ideas they say: wear light, loose, and porous clothing. Ventilate every room you occupy. Sleep out in the open if you can. So that's
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then breathe deeply. And then you avoid, and then you start getting to the things we kind of eat sparingly of meat and eggs, which I thought was interesting. Even in 1933, they were trying to tell you to lay off the meat and eggs. Don't eat
But
so
then
much.
what's life for without meat and eggs? What are we supposed to do?
I know. Probably, and at this time, probably everybody was underfed anyway. Most
Meat
of the
and
people.
eggs. I haven't had that in 3 years.
Yeah, all we have is oatmeal.
Great, we're laying off of it, all right.
Then they also say evacuate thoroughly, regularly, and frequently.
What?
So
Wow.
the sewage channel of the body is not always efficient in releasing its waste.
Okay.
This
Blah, blah,
condition
blah.
of stagnation or sluggish movement, which we call constipation,
Oh, I see.
is so common that it is accepted by most people as an inseparable feature of so-called civilized existence.
See, I'm surprised that was in 1930 because everybody was smoking.
Yeah.
You don't have constipation when you're a smoker.
Yeah, just drinking
Just
coffee.
light up another cigarette. You want to poop? Smoke. Right?
Yeah. I find that it's interesting that they would stick that in there. Again, I guess it was like, get out this, it's trying to help people live a healthier life at that time.
Yeah.
Society on top of like.
Well, there's nothing people want to know more about than pooping. I mean, and you're doing it it's very important.
Yeah. So, the World Book says I gotta do it more often and more efficiently.
Remember when we were smoking and we could smoke on the pot? We're sitting on the toilet.
Oh yeah,
God, that's living like a king.
Yeah.
You gotta
have a beer in there with you. Have a beer in there, a cigarette,
your newspaper. God.
This was interesting. The story of the baby. Okay, that one kind of came up. The story of the baby.
That cute baby. It's a good picture.
Yeah. It says the baby. A public awakened to the necessity of saving the babies. This is the outcome of one of the most important educational movements of the present time.
Uh-oh.
The high death rate among babies, see infant mortality, separate heading, was long regarded as a condition that could not be remedied. Babies were believed to be, quote, hard to raise, unquote. And it was expected that about 1 out of every 5 would die. People are wiser than they used to be. They have been brought to see that enlightened, intelligent care of infants is certain to lower the death rate, that the babies are the material out of which future citizens are made.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I want to see the writer who wrote that in my office.
I know. To me, it was like they were believed to be hard to raise. People like, I don't know. They're just so hard to raise.
Some guy in a Carol typing that shit up.
They're just so
400 words by 5 o'clock.
Yeah. A lot of stuff about accident prevention as well is what they do, and they come up with things to watch out for. One of the things that they said to watch out for was hitching on rides on the back of trolleys, and also hitching on rides on the back of trucks and cars. You know what I mean?
Dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw my son. We were at a school camp out, and a car drove by, and my son was on his skateboard, grabbing onto the bumper, smiling like a Cheshire cat. Yeah. Like, Jesus Christ.
I'm assuming that was caused a lot of injuries and deaths at the time, back in 1933, because they really make a point of that, sticking that in there.
Jesus.
Another thing, it was interesting. They had the income distribution and how people spent their money at that time in 1933.
Interesting.
And they have that. And church was only 0.75% of people's income went to support their churches. Most of the time, it was living costs was 24.5%, luxuries 22%, and then they have one crime 8.25%, which I don't know. It doesn't explain what they mean by crime. Like maybe people were just robbing you, taking
lost stuff all the time.
Yeah, like they were just at some point somebody would just come up and just take away 8% of whatever you had, you know.
Yeah. Wow. I got to think that the luxury goods, that's alcohol.
Yeah.
That's alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol and occasional movie, but
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
mostly alcohol. Uh and then we get into history, John. It was in 1933. They were still calling it the War of Secession. And keep in mind, there were still Civil War veterans that were alive at this time.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't called the Civil War yet. It was War of Secession. Some other things, World War II hadn't happened, so all we had was just World War instead,
Wow.
which was World War One. Talking about that, this they had to say about Cuba. Remember, Cuba at that time had just, it was only like 30 years before the United States had, occupied Cuba, and then
Right.
Cuba was the United States still occupied the Philippines at this time. But they say Cuba, the island republic poetically called the Pearl of the Antilles because of its beauty and natural wealth, was one of the earliest American possessions of Spain, and of one of the last two to slip away from Spanish rule. For ages, it has been a favorite winter resort for people of northern lands, and its history has been at times so closely connected with that of the United States as to render it especially interesting to Americans.
Wow.
And then it says the name, a relic of original inhabitants now extinct, is pronounced Cuba by the islanders. And this is not unlikely to become the general pronunciation in North America with the increasing intimacy of international relations, since it is a point on which some local sensitiveness has been shown. So there was like great promise that Cuba and the United States were it's
Yeah.
still going to be.
That's
Uh,
why the communists there still hate us, you
I
know?
know, I know. And then some other things. 1933. We hadn't had World War II yet, so again, it talks about fascism in Italy, but
Oh,
this is
really?
before the war, and now it's just talking about in March 1919. An
Mussolini?
ardent young ex-soldier, Benito Mussolini, had organized in Milan a band of nationalists who called themselves fascisti, having adopted the fascists of ancient Rome as their symbol. So
Wow.
it's just talking about, again, in the moment, like none of the Holocaust. Nobody knows about it hasn't
Right.
happened yet.
Right.
And then it goes in. Let's see. By crushing opposition, by placing rigid restrictions upon the press, by the enactment of a series of laws radically reapportioning the powers of the various branches of the government, strengthening the executive at the expense of the legislative branch, Mussolini soon changed the whole character of the Italian government.
Man.
So,
Man.
uh, and then it talks about in 1924, under the Italian electoral law of 1924 in Italy, the party receiving a majority of the votes at an election was arbitrarily given 2/3 of the seats in the chamber in the
Wow.
parliament.
And done
So,
and done.
right, right.
Yep.
So that's kind of interesting.
Wow. If you won
But
the majority of the votes, you
you
got
got 2/3.
2/3. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
And people are like, "Okay, whatever."
yeah. And that was like with many different parties. You know what I mean? That wasn't just like a two-party system. That was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so if you won like 23% of the vote, you would get 2/3 of the representation.
Wow.
So,
Wow. I
uh,
was doing reciting my house. I was just repairing a little section that had dry rot, and I
yeah,
found a newspaper from around this time where
yeah.
FDR was inspecting the troops the emperor's troops in Japan
Wow,
before, yeah, and
wow,
somebody had stuck it in there, and as soon as I touched it, it just disintegrated. I just
wow.
saw it and it just went,
Yeah,
but it was pretty cool.
I always love the newspapers are great because that's what people were reading every day. It's the mundane stuff that you would pick up
Yep.
out of there, which is it hasn't been curated or hasn't been edited. It's just what people were doing, what people were
Yeah.
thinking there at the time.
Yeah.
Uh, And then also, again, 1933 is when Hitler came to power.
Right.
But nobody knew anything about him. He's just kind of like a nationalist leader at that time.
Right.
Like this is pre-Holocaust. And so they say domestic politics were marked by the rapid, this is talking about in Germany, domestic politics were marked by the rapid rise of the National Socialist Party under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, who was born an Austrian and did not become a German citizen until some years after his entrance into German politics. His spectacular career began in poverty and led to the chancellorship of Germany, which he assumed at 43. And then they talk about what the Nazis, and again, they're not judging anything at the time, but they're just
Right.
saying the Nazis opposed parliamentary government and proposed the eventual establishment of a dictatorship. They stood for a strong nationalism and found inspiration in the fascist regime in Italy. In the presidential election of 1932, their leader ran a close second to President Hindenburg, the successful candidate. And then in the Reichstag elections in 1932, they secured over a third of the seats, becoming the leading party in that body. So again, Hitler hasn't quite arrived yet. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
He
So
hasn't sunk his fangs in. He's not in total control yet at all.
right, but you could see where they're already saying exactly what they're going to do, like a
I didn't realize
dictatorship.
he didn't become a German citizen until after his political career. Oh, crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. So John, just quickly, we'll get into just some of the things about, and this is where it really gets kind of shocking. The races of men. Okay,
Oh
and
boy.
this is what they're talking, and they
Mhm.
present the different races of men, and of
Mhm.
course, it's all like based on color at
Yep.
that time.
Yep.
Uh, and then it has the white Caucasians. They're wearing like a suit and, and like a dress. Everybody else looks like they're dressed from 500 years ago or
Right.
something. So you have the red Indian, the yellow Mongolian, brown Malay, and the black African, is what
Wow.
they say there.
Wow.
And again, as I was going through it's like this was cutting edge education at the time, but just to see how ingrained racism and stereotypes were.
Mhm.
So they're talking about,
Kids who are writing reports on using all of this information.
I know. Well, World Book says this. You know what I mean? So they're talking about characteristics of different people around the country. So they're talking about Italians here. And they say no physical description can be given which will fit them all, but the commonest type is that most familiar to dwellers in America or any other country to which Italians immigrate in numbers. The dark haired, dark skinned type, rather short of stature.
Hmm.
And they say men as well as women are likely to be very good looking in their youth, but they age rapidly, especially the women. And the injunction, look well at the mother before wedding the daughter, might well frighten a suitor who had fixed his fancy on a slim, smooth cheeked Italian girl.
Jesus Christ.
Can you imagine?
That's written by a guy who, married an Italian woman.
Yeah, I mean,
Furious.
this
Jesus
is an
Christ.
academic encyclopedia
Oh
basically
my
saying that.
God.
In Mexico, they say, what is a Mexican? The population of Mexico, and then they go on about that. They said the Mexican, not of the upper class, therefore, is quite sure to have Indian blood in his veins and have inherited with it the set customs and beliefs which his Indian ancestors possessed 4 centuries ago. And they go on to say, particularly strong is their love for intoxicating liquors, and every festive day serves as an excuse for excessive drinking. So that's where
Hmm.
I was like,
My God.
yeah. Modern Greece, they say anyone who takes up the study of modern Greece after studying its ancient history feels a touch of the same sadness. When the Greeks lost their freedom and became subject to Rome in 146 BC, they seemed to lose many of their best qualities also. And then they say the old love for beauty degenerated to a large extent into a fondness for display and the contempt for manual labor, which was permissible enough when there was a large body of slaves manifested itself in an overwhelming desire for easy official positions.
Jesus.
So, yeah.
so,
so anyway, I think you get the idea, John, of and just to say about like the Scottish, they say a rugged land, vigorous climate, and lack of great wealth have developed the hardy Scotsman. The brawny Highlanders, the tallest people in the world, averaging from 5'8" to 6 feet in height.
What? I didn't know that.
That was the tallest people in the world.
What
at
happened
the
to
time.
McCrays?
I don't know. we're part Welsh. I think that's what happened. But they say from their thrifty brothers of the lowlands, inherit from their warring ancestors their loyalty to country and clan, their frugality and their energy. Although the Scots are as practical and serious people, their history is full of romantic and heroic legend. So, anyway, you get the idea, John. So,
yeah. Painting with a big, wide, racist brush.
I know, it's just,
Let me tell you about the Scots.
Yeah. Anything, your thoughts now that we're coming back to the present here?
Well, it makes me feel good. I think you see progress. Things are getting better. They are getting better, and I feel like we're day players. We look at we're investing in the stock market as day players. We're just looking at what just happened and what's happening right now, versus the long game where you're seeing like, oh my God. Things are getting better. They are. They really, really are.
That's what I mean. The fact that it sounds shocking when you hear that stuff.
Yeah.
Like nobody would ever make just a blatantly stereotypical statement in an academic journal now.
No.
You know what I mean?
Do it. Yeah.
And the other thing, so that made me feel better.
It's PC, but because it's more precise.
Yeah.
It's just those big, wide open statements like that. The writer met one person and two people from Italy.
And it goes out to all the schools across the country
and
in the world
suddenly
book.
We're all like, they look good when they're young, but man, when they get ugly.
Hey kids, here's a lesson for you.
Yeah, watch out.
Can you imagine putting that into like a book report or something, or like a country report? You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
The other thing, that made me feel better that we've come away, we've advanced since that time. But also, it just made me feel how ephemeral everything is in life and how fleeting it is. Of like not only the knowledge, like what knowledge in 100 years are we going to look at and be like, what, you were still talking about, computers at that, or like hard monitors at that time or something,
No. Nobody will know. When you say mouse, people will think of the creature. That's it.
Yeah.
And I know it's all so fast. And as you get older, you just see that, the race, the change, the amount of change. My God.
And also it just let me know of how these people were cutting edge educators at the time who were doing something really innovative and that had never been done before, which was trying to make education, accessible to kids and to young people in a way that made it interesting.
Yeah, and to the masses. I mean, it was like, it blew the dust off of the. You think back to medieval times when they had to chain the books to the library shelf.
Yeah.
Now suddenly here's this mass printing of everything in the world.
Right.
And, that anybody can get.
Yeah.
For $39.95 a month.
So I've always been fascinated by looking at it of the changes that we've had, and also just how the people, like, we're all fleeting. You know what I mean? It just kind of, hopefully we all just treat each other with a little more compassion, a little more understanding of 100 years from now.
Listen, I totally agree with you. That's why I stage dove at my son's thing. People are like, "Are you crazy?" And I'm like, "I'm not afraid to die."
Yeah.
Link, when then with stage dive, sure. What the hell do I care?
I'm gonna try to put that on our. I'm gonna try to post that because you look so happy. You look so happy.
Just go to the second one.
You see, I'm gonna push you back up.
Yeah, they're like, "No, man, you got to actually jump off the thing." Well,
all right, John.
This has been great. This is human number 2 signing off.
And this is human number 1. Thank you very much for listening to us, everybody. If you found this interesting, please tell a friend about it. And be sure to talk or check out our sponsor, Watson & Company Socks on Facebook. The most modern socks you'll
They're
find.
They're fantastic. I wore some of those on my driving trip.
Yeah.
Thank you, Watson.
They're good traveling. Good traveling socks.
My son has stolen them all, and so I just found them in his suitcase and put them on.
And be sure to check out on Etsy, Puppies Not Piranhas, and to check out all of their friendship bracelets, including the Intro to Anthro friendship bracelets, which you'll have to order off menu. And thanks for listening to everybody. Yeah. John, welcome back. We love you guys. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, John. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.